Whoa, that's a new one!
Black Panther and Batman were pretty evenly matched. Both were super geniuses and expert combatants.
Well, BP was stronger and faster thanks to that superhuman herb. It definitely helped, but alone was not enough to beat the Bat. Batman has won dozens of duels against people with similar or even better abilities.
As far as skills were concerned, neither held a distinct advantage. However, that was not the case when it came to their weapons and armor.
Long story short, that vibranium got Batman stumped. He just didn't have anything in that belt of his that could get around it.
We scoured the comics, movies, TV shows, and more to see if Batman had any possible way of countering the vibranium. While he's used hundreds of clever gadgets over the years, we were actually very surprised to find that he had no reliable method of getting around armor like that.
Take a look at Batman's fights with Bane. He doesn't have armor, but he's physically superior to Bats just like Black Panther is. And what does Batty always do to beat him? Aim for the weak spot. But guess what? Black Panther doesn't have a weak spot.
It's certainly believable that Wayne had the ability to develop a gun that could overload the Panther habit, but even if he could, he never would wield it in the first place thanks to his rejection of all firearms.
And while his suit can stop a few knives and bullets, it didn't stand a chance against Black Panther's anti-metal claws. In the end, Bruce just waned in comparison to T'Challa.
The winner is Black Panther.
KO!
Dear Princess Celestia, today I learned that the only thing more powerful than friendship is a giant bird spirit colliding into me at Mark 36.
This was a tricky one. Both Raven and Twilight possess numerous spells and techniques that could end the other quickly and easily.
Since they were pretty even in how many ways they could finish each other off, this fight really came down to strength, durability, and performance.
First of all, it's pretty obvious Raven's telekinesis has been shown to be much stronger than Twilight's.
But Wiz, what about when Twilight moved the sun and moon?
That's when she had the magic of Princess Celestia and Luna, and it's well established that only their specific type of magic can move those celestial bodies.
So, you're saying you want us to move the sun and the moon?
Well, I do it myself, except I don't have your magic.
With her own magic, Twilight has never shown anything close to the kind of force Raven used to lift the Teen Titans Tower.
Raven had the durability advantage too. Remember how Twilight's shield held up against a hit a little over 8 million newtons? Well, Raven's soul self is tougher than Donna Troy, who can shrug off a blast worth 296 tillion newtons. That's 16 more zeros, in case you're wondering.
And don't forget, Twilight had the power of 4 alicorns at that time. The shield wouldn't have saved her from Raven's soul self anyway.
Not only could it absorb Twilight's powers and emotions, and not only was it capable of operating while Raven was unconscious, but it also made a mean dive bomber.
Raven's soul self could fly at speeds exceeding Mach 36. Since it's often been used as a battering ram to hit enemies, we know it has mass, but not exactly how much. However, given its size, strength, and durability far exceeds Raven's own, its mass is likely greater than hers.
Let's just lowball it and say they're equal, alright?
Sure. Adding Raven's mass to the Mach 36 calculation, the Soul Self's ramming force at top speed comes to 15 million newtons of force, far greater than what Twilight's shield has sustained.
Ain't no pony walking away from that. Plus, Twilight's positive attitude meant Raven didn't have to even worry about pain when using her emotions against her.
While they may have matched each other in spells and skill, Raven's more powerful traits and exceptional Soul Self earned her a hard-fought victory.
Yep, Raven really ponied up for this one.
The winner is Raven.
KO!
Whoa, wait, what just happened?
Well, all Kenshiro needed to do to win was just get one hit in, but this matchup was far closer than that makes it seem.
Of course it was. Kenshiro spent the whole time fighting Star Platinum, who he couldn't even see. Lucky for him, once he figured that out, his ability to sense other fighting auras helped him keep track of SP. But no matter what he did, Kenshiro isn't a stand user, so he couldn't actually hurt Star Platinum.
Then again, Star Platinum's own strength wasn't quite enough to hurt Kenshiro much either. One of Star Platinum's greatest strength feats involves breaking and throwing a small section of a building. In comparison, Kenshiro broke an entire building, let it fall on him, and acted like it wasn't even there.
Also, while Jotaro may be skilled in deducing his enemy's weaknesses and strategies in mid-fight, Kenshiro's skills, durability, and straightforward approach meant there really wasn't anything for him to pick apart here.
Kenshiro did have trouble with Jotaro's time-stopping and Star Platinum's speed. However, with his awesome durability plus additional intangibility when using Muso Tensei, Kenshiro survived the time stops, and the time stops cooldowns between uses gave Kenshiro enough time to work around them.
The time stop has been worked around by foes in Jotaro's past before, and as far as speed was concerned, Kenshiro may not have been faster than Star, but a mix of Musou Tensei and Mirage clones were more than enough to get by. And let's be real, Jotaro never stood a chance against Kenshiro by himself.
In the end, both combatants had plenty of advantages, but Kenshiro's techniques and overwhelming power ended this fight.
JoJo didn't stand a chance.
The winner is Kenshiro.
KO!
I don't think Aku Aku's gonna pull Crash from the grave after that.
Spyro had plenty of obvious advantages. His speedy flight let him control the pace of the battle, and his elemental arsenal gave him a much wider variety of attacks than Crash had ever seen in a one-on-one fight. Even with his extraordinary puzzle-solving skills, Crash was simply overwhelmed. But surprisingly, this wasn't nearly as one-sided as it looked on paper.
With the strength to throw an 8-ton boulder, Crash was actually stronger than Spyro, and both of them had survived impacts worth around 2 million tons of force. How convenient! It's almost like they planned this all along.
To be fair, we did have to lowball Spyro's durability against the Golem's punch. However, both of them had shown durability, which far exceeded much of their attack capability.
So even with his gadgets, Crash really didn't have a good way to hurt Spyro very much. But the funny thing is, Spyro didn't have many attacks that could firmly hurt Crash either. They were both just too tough.
Well, until Spyro used the Ether Breath, which could literally break matter apart at an atomic level. Not even Aku Aku could save Crash from a beam that intense.
I guess Crash just couldn't spin this one.
The winner is Spyro the Dragon.
KO!
Youch! That's one way to fly too close to the Sora, sun. Pit may have had the advantage in flight and experience, but he couldn't beat Sora's strength, toughness, and speed.
Pit may have dodged a laser moving 90 million miles per hour, but Sora's reaction speed was quick enough to dodge natural lightning. A lightning bolt's return stroke, which constitutes the bright flash, moves at around 220 million miles per hour, over twice as fast as Pit.
That, combined with his teleporting and time manipulation powers, meant Sora was just too quick for Pit to land very many big hits. Plus, when Sora shot that Keyblade beam to the moon, it took 1 second flat.
That's 1.28 times the speed of light, much faster than anything Pit's reacted to before. Of course, Pit did have enough weapons to keep Sora busy, but Sora's impressive and wide-ranging magical arsenal provided multiple counters for pretty much anything Pit threw at him, including superior healing techniques.
Hey, remember that building Sora cut through? Slicing it up like Swiss cheese was impressive enough, but this building was completely made of stone from top to bottom, and Sora cut through 7 at once!
These buildings may have been composed of a modest stone like granite, which has a minimum shearing strength of 14 megapascals. In comparison to Sora's height, each building was about 23 feet tall. By measuring Sora's largest slash and the distance cut through all 7 buildings, we can determine Sora's striking energy to equal, at minimum, 78 tons of TNT.
That's way more than Pit's boulder pulverizing feat. No wonder this guy beat Herc.
Speaking of which, let's compare some of the strongest beings Sora and Pit have taken hits from. The amount of energy needed for Hercules to throw that rock titan into space had to have been around 24 megatons of TNT, whereas Hades strikes were equivalent to only 30 tons at best.
So Pit had never survived anything close to Sora's strongest attacks. Just by numbers alone, Sora's strength, speed, and durability just outclassed Pit. And the Keyblade by itself had a way more impressive track record than any of Pit's weapons. You might say it was the key to this fight. And when we pit them together, one of them was bound to be a Sora loser.
The winner is Sora.
KO!
Something tells me Frank won't be coming back from the dead this time.
Frank's cheeky strategies and endlessly creative arsenal certainly put up a good fight, but in the end, Leon just had him beat in nearly every other category.
Frank was one tough cookie, but Leon's superhuman abilities were just more impressive. Frank's pushed a 2-ton car, right?
Yes, which is similar to Leon holding back the shark's 2-ton biting force. But his boulder feat was much more impressive. By comparing the boulder's size to Leon, it appears to have weighed around 9 tons at minimum. While Leon did have help pushing it, even half of 9 tons is much heavier than anything Frank's lifted or pushed.
Leon and Frank seemed equally tough, but Leon was definitely quicker. Bullet timing, laser dodging, and hell, Leon's speed and precision with his knife on its own is more impressive than any speed feat Frank's got.
But in the end, the most important question was whether or not Leon could cope with Frank's insane weaponry and unpredictable creativity.
But Leon's seen plenty of crazy shit in his career and fought lots of surprising and off-putting monsters.
His years of formal training and more consistent combat records certainly lent him the experience needed to win. He's survived numerous battles with enemies powerful enough to one-shot him, and he's shown plenty of creative strategy and critical thinking mid-fight.
Like when he fought Tyrant Glenn, using momentum from his own injuries and throwing a friggin' motorcycle through the air. Leon was just too fast, too strong, too experienced, and too badass. He was frankly on his game.
The winner is Leon Kennedy.
KO!
So, don't doctors take an oath to never take a life or whatever?
Analyzing this matchup was bizarre. You might even say it was strange?
Save the puns, Wiz, that's my job. But yeah, both these Doctor Wizards were so stupidly powerful, trying to find their limit was like looking for a needle in a haystack. But nobody remembered to put the needle there in the first place.
With their maximum potential seemingly unmeasurable, it's easy to make an argument for either one to win. If given the chance, Strange could have certainly, say, stolen Fate's powers, or maybe even just willed him out of existence.
I bet plenty of Strange fans are letting us know how in the comments below.
And that's fine, but Death Battle looks at the larger picture to find the most likely outcome of them all, and Fate simply held the advantage on a grander scale.
Strange may have fought a 5,000-year war, but Nabu's been around since the beginning of the universe. Over 10 billion years. He definitely had way more experience.
Fate also had the advantage of casting the majority of his spells non-verbally, while many of Strange's required specific hand movements and incantations. Still, it was only a matter of time until the Eye of Agamotto informed Strange of Fate's one weakness.
Depowering him wasn't as easy as you'd think. He had his own magic, and his superhuman strength was something Strange didn't have at all. Basically, anything Strange could do, Fate could do too. But even more.
Remember how Strange cast a spell which moved him 6 quadrillion times the speed of light?
Yep! Now remember how Fate's helmet flew from Earth to the edge of the universe and back?
It took about 1 year to make this trip. Given the estimated scope of the observable and unknown universe, a trip of this magnitude would require the helm to fly nearly 28 decillion times the speed of light. That's over 4 quintillion times faster than Strange.
Look at it this way, Strange was a man borrowing the powers of a god, while Fate's a god borrowing a man. Plus, that power boost with Inza's soul from the amulet put Fate on a level above the gods in his universe, something Strange can't really do himself.
Both Doctor Strange and Dr. Fate possessed incomprehensibly impressive magic, but Fate held more experience, greater physical abilities, and a wider range of talents.
Which left Steven stuck with a strange twist of fate.
The winner is Dr. Fate.
KO!
Oh, I get why it's called the power of nothingness now. There's nothing left in his chest.
This one was a tricky match to decipher. Both Ryu and Jin had many displays of incredible feats, but very few truly showcased the upper limits of their power. We know that in their base forms, both could lift around 30 tons and move at supersonic speeds. Also, we know Ryu could maintain a much better level of control and discipline in Muno Ken than Jin in Devil form.
Yeah, hardcore Tekken fans know he had pretty good control over it in that Blood Vengeance movie, but it's pretty inconsistent with game canon. Even Tekken's creator has said it's not canon.
Also, Jin's fall from orbit feat was impressive, but it is hard to quantify due to its presentation. Even if we assume we are to take it literally, a man of Jin's size landing at terminal velocity would equal around 18 tons of force.
But to find their limits, we had to scale them to comparable characters.
Scaling Jin to his father Kazuya was logical. Kazuya survived that 3.7 megaton laser blast, and it's clear it was necessary for him to be in devil form to do so. Kazuya's own laser blast was strong enough to help kick off a volcano's eruption, a feat which could require up to 100 megatons of TNT. But that's a very generous estimate, and its actual potency is likely much less.
Since their power comes from the same place, and Jin's even defeated Kazuya before, it's safe to say Jin can do all this too. As for Ryu, we knew exactly who we had to scale him to. Let's talk about Akuma.
First off, just to prove this scaling is reasonable, Ryu and Akuma share very similar abilities. Both were trained in the Otsutsuken fighting style, and both possessed the Satsui no Hado. They fought each other several times, and when the story was all said and done, Ryu emerged ultimately victorious based on his skill alone.
Now that that's out of the way, let's watch Akuma punch an island to death.
With a single strike, Akuma managed to break apart an entire island so thoroughly that Ryu, who was on the island, was left floating helplessly in nearly clear water. Assuming the island is somewhat circular, we've estimated the volume and deduced that in order to fragment the island like this, Akuma's punch must have been over 400 megatons of TNT.
That's more than 4 times stronger than anything a Devil Gene has pulled off, and Ryu takes blows from this guy all the time.
Sure, Ryu wasn't getting hit with 400 megatons every time Akuma landed a punch, but the most a Devil Gene carrier has ever survived amounts to less than 1% in comparison. Even if Jin could survive a strike as strong as Kazuya's volcano feat, it still pales in comparison. The fact that Ryu survived being on the island as it was blown apart helps justify this scaling too.
Well, Jin still takes the speed advantage with that flight into orbit, but it doesn't mean much when the difference of power and toughness is this massive.
When it came down to it, Ryu's strength, durability, and control were just too far out of Jin's reach.
Wait, Wiz, we forgot a feat. You remember that gun Jack robot? A later model of Jack once destroyed a meteor. Couldn't we just scale Jin to that?
Well, it's unsupported by canon material, but even if we did, guess who destroyed an even bigger meteor?
Akuma? Damn. Well, Jin up, everybody. Ryu's taking care of business.
The winner is Ryu.
KO!
So, is he gonna get his arm back, or...?
Afro was an exceptional warrior, and his skills would absolutely dominate most sword fights. However, Jack has had a lot of experience with opponents who fight dirty, and Afro could not stand up to his physical superiority.
Yeah, Afro never showed strength like how Jack lifted that 39-ton boulder.
Jack could react as fast as 70% the speed of light. Afro did block that light speed laser beam, but based on the distance between him and the Afro droid, he only needed to react around 21% the speed of light to do this, still putting him at impressive relativistic speeds, but not even half as quick as Jack.
Also, while Afro survived that mega-sized RPG explosion, don't forget how Jack survived a fall from orbit.
While it does seem the spacesuit was responsible for Jack's surviving re-entry, it certainly can't be held solely accountable for the final impact. Starting his descent from the Kármán line, or the boundary between Earth's atmosphere and space, Jack covered a distance of 62 miles in just under 7 seconds, moving well over terminal velocity.
Thanks to being propelled by exploding space speed.
Which means his top velocity was approximately 37,000 miles per hour. Adding the spacesuit's weight to his own, this means his impact force must have equaled about 19 megatons of force. Way more than anything Afro survived.
And then he just got up and walked away. Badass. In the end, Jack was just too fast, too strong, too tough, and too well trained for Afro to handle.
The winner is Samurai Jack.
KO!
First those kids at the orphanage, then Cletus. Lucy really hates dog killers, and for good reason.
Carnage was a challenging opponent. It was incredibly difficult for Lucy to deal any lasting damage against him.
He had the durability advantage in the bag, though Lucy fighting as a puddle proved she could take a lot of pain and keep on fighting. Sadly, Carnage came up short in pretty much everything else.
Right, Carnage was tough, but not invincible. Even his surviving that gene bomb isn't quite as impressive as it sounds, since he had no other feats to even remotely back up planetary-level durability, and the bomb was more akin to a biological weapon anyway. While Carnage's tendrils could pass speeds of Mach 2, Lucy's vectors once reached into outer space. By timing her accompanying monologue and comparing the longest vector's length to the curvature of the Earth, it's clear she reached over 2,400 miles in 20 seconds max.
Way longer than Carnage's 2-mile feat.
All this means her vectors were moving at least 440,000 miles per hour, more than 500 times the speed of sound and 250 times faster than Carnage.
Good luck getting past that. And this was really the biggest hurdle. With Lucy's redonkulous speed and Carnage's healing powers, it all boiled down to one thing. Who could hit the killing blow first? I mean, Carnage could respawn from scraps, so the only way to beat him for good was to totally vaporize him.
And Lucy had the perfect answer to that. Remember that time she hit an island so hard she caused a 9.2 magnitude earthquake and a 100-foot tall tidal wave? Such a feat would require an enormous amount of explosive energy, approximately 31,000 tons of TNT, similar to the bomb that hit Hiroshima.
It's literally compared to nuclear fusion in the Elfen Lied manga.
Elfen Lied, it's German.
The point is, in order to beat Carnage for good, Lucy needed to totally obliterate him, and she could do that.
The heat produced within the initial impact of a nuclear explosion can reach temperatures up to 180,000 degrees Fahrenheit, more than 18 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And to top it off, heat was Carnage's biggest weakness. Even if Lucy's explosive force was just a fraction of this, it would still have been far too much for him.
She just needed to smack him before he could power through her vectors, which chances were pretty slim for that happening anyway because there's a bunch of them and they're so damn fast. Hitting Carnage with a big explosion punch was way easier.
Cletus and his symbiote may have had the endurance, but Lucy's space-worthy speed, overwhelming presence, and nuclear strength won the day.
She dealt the carnage needed for a total victory and took the lead. There, I said it right, Wiz. Happy?
The winner is Lucy.
KO!
He's got the touch! He's got the power!
The Gundam was an impressive machine, and Amuro was a skilled pilot, but Optimus's millions of years of battle experience completely overshadowed Amuro's 14. Also, we already know that Optimus was over 6 times faster and 9,000 times stronger.
Holy hell! Who knew Optimus was so freaking buff? But the Gundam held plenty of its own advantages. With Amuro's super future sense powers, he could keep up with Optimus's speed. And with the Gundam's firepower, who cares how much it could lift?
Unfortunately, the Gundam's limited ammunition meant this couldn't last. And even then, Optimus could certainly survive a shot from the beam rifle.
Remember that refinery explosion Optimus survived? The one you could see from outer space?
This blast left an enormous gash on the planet Cybertron. To measure the power of this explosion, we needed to compare it to the curve of the planet. Now, Cybertron's size is pretty inconsistent throughout G1 Transformers history, but even when using the alternating sizes between the cartoon and the comics, the blast is far more destructive than the beam rifle in both cases.
And Optimus just walked right out of that bitch. And this isn't some weird outlier just out of the comics either. In the cartoon, Megatron survived a blast that pushed Cybertron out of orbit. And he's pretty comparable to Optimus.
To be fair, the Gundam boasted some impressive durability feats too.
Like when Amuro accidentally blew up a Zaku's nuclear reactor right in his own face. Hey, give him a break. It was his first time.
This explosion created a hole in the space colony which sucked out Amuro's father.
Whoops. On the bright side, he's gonna save some money on Father's Day gifts, right?
And with his heightened mind, we deduced the scope of the explosion.
It's over 150,000 kilotons of TNT. That's 10,000 times more powerful than the bomb that dropped on Hiroshima, but still nowhere close to the refinery explosion Optimus survived.
Also, the Gundam couldn't dodge Optimus's ion blaster forever. It was fast enough to strike targets in orbit from ground level. That puts its laser speed over 3 million miles per hour.
Even when he knew it was coming, Amuro couldn't react quick enough to dodge or block anything that fast. And even then, Optimus's time in the Omni-Globe proves he can think way faster than Amuro.
And just to blow your mind even more, in order to obliterate Unicron with the Matrix, the energy output must have equaled more than 40 yotatons of TNT.
Like the Star Wars guy? And you know what they say, size matters not, especially when Optimus has defeated opponents as big as Devastator.
The Gundam was a powerful mobile suit with some astonishing firepower, but was ultimately outmatched by the Autobot's strength, speed, durability, and experience.
I'd say Optimus was primed for this fight.
The winner is Optimus Prime.
KO!
What the? Was that live action? We can do that now?
This was possibly one of our closest matchups to date. Despite lacking a true superhuman physique, both Nightwing and Daredevil were extremely skilled and deadly fighters.
When it came to overpowering each other, they were pretty dead even. Sure, based on their previous feats, we can tell that Nightwing seemed a little stronger and more acrobatic, and Daredevil seemed a little quicker to react.
But these differences were extremely minimal. It's actually feasible that these two could pull off almost all the exact same feats.
Keyword being almost.
Right, with such similar physical abilities, this really came down to their arsenal, Nightwing's gadgets and Daredevil's superpowers. At first glance, these could simply counter each other, making this match completely even again. For example, both could take advantage of the dark with night vision or super senses, but only one set was perfectly suited to actively disrupt the other.
Remember Nightwing's scanning mask? There's no way he couldn't notice those electro waves Daredevil's radar sense was sending everywhere. Even Mr. Magoo could have figured out something was weird here, let alone the guy trained by frickin' Batman. You know, the greatest detective in the world.
Through a little hand-to-hand action, Nightwing was certainly clever enough to recognize Daredevil's reliance to sound over sight, and had the perfect counterweapon, the ultrasonic wingding.
Look, I'm sure there were several possible scenarios where Daredevil could have pulled off the win, but more times than not, Nightwing takes this thanks to his athletic skill, detective training, and high-tech gadgets. All he had to do was dare to wing it.
The winner is Nightwing.
KO!
Whoa! How did that happen? I know Nintendo won the console wars, but I really seem to remember Sonic having this one in the bag.
I'm sure Sonic could have won in specific circumstances, but more times than not, Mario takes the victory. Keep in mind this analysis was done with a focus on the games and their closely tied media, excluding alternate contrary sources like the Archie comics or the Mario Brothers movie, where Mario and Sonic are essentially entirely different characters from their gaming counterparts.
Sonic had speed in the bag, obviously, but Mario was way too tough for him.
Their top strength feats paint this picture very clearly.
But I know what you're thinking. What good is Mario's strength if he couldn't even hit the blue blur? He's way too fast, right?
Yes and no. While Mario obviously couldn't match Sonic's relativistic top-running speeds, he's moved efficiently as a bolt of electricity and piloted the Star Diver. Based on our calculations, this puts him at the same level as Sonic's own reactionary feats. Since Mario was tough enough to tank almost anything Sonic could throw at him, it was only a matter of time before he tagged the blue blur with a deadly blow.
But what about chaos control? Couldn't Sonic just stop time and take care of things while...
It's heavily implied he knows how to, but Sonic has never actually used the time stop ability in canon. Even then, Mario's stopwatch does the same thing, putting them on equal footing.
Ah, don't do that! Where's my wallet?
Actually, most of Mario and Sonic's power-ups countered each other in this way. Mario even had plenty of options for defending against Sonic's invincible super forms. But Mario also had a much wider variety of power-ups, offering multiple ways to overpower Sonic. For example, he could have frozen Sonic solid, or even turned him into gold. His arsenal would always outlast Sonic's because he's been shown to carry more of them on his person.
Oh god! Oh, I've seen things!
But even then, Mario's durability blew Sonic's out of the water. Even if we assume the 200 kiloton stalactite feat was entirely Sonic's doing, Mario survived an explosion that was 12 times more powerful. Simply put, Sonic didn't have a lot of viable options that could take Mario down for good.
I always knew Sonic was impressive, but Mario is just ridiculous. Probably that mustache.
Sonic was obviously incredibly fast, but he couldn't compete with Mario's superior strength, durability, and varied arsenal.
He got Mario'd.
After 100 episodes, you still can't think of a good pun?
No, but now they can see me do this. Ah, check it out, Wiz.
The winner is Mario.
KO!
Well, I guess that's one way to make friends.
Despite Sigma's deviousness and ferocity, he was fairly outclassed by Ultron's talents.
Sigma could scale to the General, who took a face full of 63 sextillion tons of TNT. But Ultron can withstand hits from Thor and his hammer, and we all know how awesome that thing is.
When Thor fought Gore the God Butcher, their battle created shockwaves powerful enough to shatter planets thousands of miles away. This could only be possible with a force equivalent to 682 septillion tons of TNT, over 10,000 times stronger than anything Sigma could survive.
And not only has Ultron frequently smacked Thor around like a toddler, Thor has had a really hard time trying to damage Ultron's adamantium armor, so Sigma's weapons couldn't either.
In terms of speed, Ultron flew across the galaxy in several months, putting him roughly 200,000 times the speed of light. That's leagues faster than Sigma, even if we scale him to Duo, who is 114 times light speed. And frankly, scaling to Duo through Mega Man in the first place is a bit capricious, as Duo didn't use his full potential in their fight.
Even with all that, it really didn't matter who could punch harder or move faster, because the real fight was between the Ultron AI and the Sigma virus.
Right, and while infection and possession was kind of the Sigma virus's thing, Ultron's AI was far more advanced. Recall how he enslaved an entire techno-organic race, to the point where he used them to conquer an empire spanning a whole satellite galaxy.
Yeah, the Phalanx are like Marvel's version of the Borg. Hell, that means Ultron basically Sigma'd a whole race of Sigmas.
It also helps that Ultron is as smart or smarter than Hank, the scientist supreme. Hank's even admitted as much, and he's smart enough to construct an infinitely sized mansion in a higher dimension of existence. Sigma was certainly a ruthless schemer, but nowhere near that level.
The only time Ultron was ever defeated by a virus was one specifically designed to bypass his defenses and leave him vulnerable to attack from the future and a bunch of other complicated stuff.
Sigma was a tenacious one, but Ultron was the stronger android, the tougher villain, and the deadlier virus.
It wasn't long before Ultron Sigma-lated him.
The winner is Ultron.
KO!
Talk about a whole new way to win.
Jiraiya was certainly one of the most powerful warriors of his own world, but there's no question that Roshi's sheer might outclassed him.
One guy can break a mountain, the other can break a moon. So that was pretty obvious.
The speed comparison wasn't quite so clear-cut though. While his unseen battle with Krillin was incredibly quick, Roshi's never personally shown speeds as fast as the lightning feats Jiraiya scaled to.
But he did hold his own in the Tournament of Power against Planet and Galaxy Busters. Also, in Goku's training right after Korin's, he actually had to dodge lightning. Roshi's own training didn't stop after chasing the kitty around, and neither did his kitty chasing. So, scaled to Goku's progress, it makes sense that he'd be able to match Jiraiya's speed, and probably even surpass it.
Still, it would be reasonable to believe Jiraiya could use his tactical talent to outsmart and outlast Roshi.
Except Roshi's a smart fighter too. Not only does he have way more experience thanks to his super age, but he's got an eye for traps in sticky situations, like when he figured out the illusion powers of the talisman fighter Derkori.
And remember, it took only 15 seconds for Roshi's Kamehameha to reach the moon. Given the moon's distance of over 200,000 miles from the surface of the Earth, this means the beam must have traveled over 57 million miles per hour, more than 260 times faster than lightning. There was no way Jiraiya could avoid Roshi's trademark move for very long.
Sure, Jiraiya might be a crafty ninja, but all that doesn't boil down to much more than tricks against someone like Roshi.
Roshi was simply faster, stronger, and had way more experience.
And that's why Jiraiya croaked when Roshi beat him to the punch.
The winner is Master Roshi.
KO!
Oh man, that's the worst way he could have gone out, because now he's gonna be dying over and over and over.
Thanos was an incredible foe, especially while wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. Unfortunately, the gauntlet had a fatal flaw.
Yeah, that golden glove only works in its own universe, and Darkseid could easily move the fight to new ones with his boomstick tubes. Universe hopping is kind of his thing.
The Reed Richards of the Interdimensional Council of Reeds figured this out. Its 3 founding members, Reed, Reed, and Reed, each possessed Infinity Gauntlets, but discovered that they couldn't work outside of their own universes.
The gauntlet had no problem making Darkseid's avatar not feel so good, but since Darkseid's true form was always in the Fourth World universe, Thanos couldn't actually finish him off with the gauntlet.
Even if this fight took place in entirely neutral territory, the victor wouldn't change. Thanos' gauntlet wouldn't work, and true Darkseid's presence would actually just destroy everything just by being there.
But he didn't just lose because of the gauntlet. He really couldn't keep up with the space golem.
Even going toe-to-toe with a being as fast as Silver Surfer was nothing compared to when Darkseid took a trip to the edge of existence. This puts Darkseid almost 28 octillion times faster than Thanos.
And his Omega effect scales to the Astro Force, which could equal the Oblivion Bomb's universe-destroying blast. This means the Omega effect and Infinity Gauntlet were both pretty even in terms of destructive ability. But unlike Thanos, Darkseid can use his Omega powers whenever and wherever he wants.
Once he lost the gauntlet, Thanos could certainly survive star-level attacks, and even greater. But universal destruction is definitely a bit more than his purple Eternal Hide could handle. And even after that, Darkseid had plenty of ways to end the fight whenever he wanted, like the Omega Sanction.
Thanos was super powerful, but Darkseid was just faster, stronger, and even more ruthless.
And if you think about it, Thanos needed the Infinity Gauntlet to become a god, but Darkseid already was one.
Thanos just couldn't
Won the gauntlet!
Oh, you son of a bitch!
The winner is Darkseid.